Hello, my name is Margaret Adelle, and I'm going to talk about a book today. Like usual. Anyway, I loved those 1990s style action adventure family movies where like a lot of big things were happening and there was technically a lot of danger and maybe the whole earth is at risk, but the tone is so lighthearted and comedic that it still gave you like the feel good despite all the danger. And I have discovered that in book form, in the form of the Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi. This should not be as lighthearted as it is, judging by everything going on. Our protagonist, Jamie, is down on his luck after losing his job and being forced to deliver food during the COVID-19 pandemic. It name drops it directly, and an old friend from college that he barely knows offers him a job for this animal rights organization, as they call it. It is, yes, the Kaiju Preservation Society, taking place in an alternate dimension, and they are literally taking care of and studying these giant kaiju things. And of course, there's always that study of who's the real monster, the kaiju or the humans that are trying to use them for their own ends, like that kind of thing. But the tone is spectacular. It's that kind of lighthearted sarcasm without being mean. The group dynamic between Jamie and all of his coworkers on their little team that they work in this alternate dimension is so good. It is like the quips and the, egging each other on and that kind of stuff is so clearly meant to be in good faith and in good fun, and you never really think, oh, this guy's a jerk at any point, which I sometimes get a little wary of in these kinds of books. But in general, I just loved, first off, how slow it actually is to move up to any of the big stuff. It's probably the coziest version of the story you could tell, because a lot of the book moving forward at the first maybe 1 to 2/3 doesn't have a lot of really big plot. It's just a lot of kind of exploring this other earth that these kaiju live in and going a little bit into the science. If I could want for anything, I think I would have wanted a little bit more descriptions. There's very, very little descriptions of even the kaiju or even other characters. It's an incredibly diverse cast. You have Maori people, you have Indian, you have various gender identities and queer characters. There's just so much diversity in the cast, and I loved it. But a lot of how I figured out it was diversity was either through their names or references that were made randomly throughout the book. There's not a lot of descriptions, which, if you're the kind of person that's just there for the quips and the action, then that probably would work for you. But that was literally the only thing I could think of that I would want more. And the big plot, when it did take place, was properly big. Nice twists and turns. I might have called the big twist, but I wasn't really expecting it to be super shocking anyway. And in general, I do like this book for its tone, specifically because when this book was first recommended to me, I was in the middle of a rather big reading slump. To the extent that I was considering just deleting my entire TBR and starting over. I was so done. And this was one of the books that was suggested to me as a way to, prevent said slump. I didn't actually read it during that slump. I managed to crawl out of it myself. But when I did read this later, I could totally see, yeah, that makes 100% sense. This definitely would be a book I would suggest to someone else who wants to read but doesn't want anything super dense. In general, I am now looking more into this author as a whole. I had not read from John Scalzi before, but this is just very weirdly summary and lighthearted, despite the fact that you're literally dealing with nuclear reacting kaiju and explosions and villains and all of that kind of stuff near the end of the book. It just, for the longest time, it just felt like a bunch of scientist friends hanging out and doing sciencey stuff. And it was nice. It felt like a trip with friends. And I would highly suggest this one, especially if you are a fan of those kind of light-hearted action adventure movies like from the 90s. I'm really hoping that that genre of movie makes a big comeback outside of like the children's or family like studios, like that big studios will bring those back. But if they don't, I guess I will then have to discover more books like these, because this really hit the spot.